What Ollie Space wants to do is to create a much smaller satellite, which can go literally latch on to that satellite as a jetpack, and then without transferring fuel, become their tow truck in some sense and keep the satellite in orbit for another 5-6 years. Right. So, from a very low cost option, you get another 5 years of an asset which is typically generating $50 to $100 million per year for you, is a great outcome for these businesses. And we felt the team, although a very young team, we felt that they had some unique ideas on how to do this in a low cost, low footprint manner rather than building a very big satellite again to push that.
Hi, wherever you're joining me, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to India Tech Report, a podcast dedicated to chronicling and supporting the growth of India's deep tech and climate tech ecosystems, with the occasional segue into other areas of tech entrepreneurship. I'm Hariarakli, and in this episode, I'm joined by Manish Singhal, founding partner of Pi Ventures, a Bengaluru-based early-stage venture capital firm backing some of India's most ambitious deep tech startups. India's startup story is often told through software and services, yet a quieter transformation is underway in laboratories, machine shops, and clean rooms. And Manish has been one of the earliest investors consistently supporting this gradual change, first as an angel investor and then through Pi Ventures. Over the past decade, Pi Ventures has gone from backing AI-led software plays to financing startups in sectors such as space, semiconductors, robotics, clean energy, and electric mobility. From its first fund, Pi Ventures backed companies such as Zenatix, Niramai, Sigtuple, Locus, and Wysa, but also Agnikul Cosmos. The firm is currently investing from its second fund, which at $85 million is almost 3 times the first fund. Its portfolio now includes startups building 3D printed rocket engines, optical interconnects for data centers, electric tractors, designed from first principles, and in-orbit satellite jetpacks that extend the life of multi-million-dollar assets. Prior to Pi Ventures, which turns 10 in March, Manish started out as an electrical engineer from IIT Kanpur and accumulated 2 decades of operating experience building products and teams at companies including Motorola, ATM Systems, and Sling Media, where he helped scale the company's India R&D center. His firm's recent investments, such as MoonRider, which makes electric tractors, Lightspeed Photonics, which makes optical interconnects for AI data centers, and Space, which is developing in-orbit satellite servicing technologies, reflect Manish's conviction that Indian startups can build globally relevant deep tech products. He's not unaware of the still entrenched and considerable challenges in the way of those dreaming of deep tech success from India. And he's also clear-eyed about the limits of industrial policy and wary of fads in indigenous technology. But Manish is optimistic when he talks about how deep tech founders in India are becoming more audacious in their aspirations and how India is on the cusp of being seen as a genuine deep tech nation. Manish, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate your time. So today's context, I thought I wanted to bring our audience a sense of how you are seeing India's deep tech ecosystems evolve, and you've made some investments in recent months, and I thought we can talk about that as well. Incidentally, Pi Ventures turned 10 years last year or this year?
Thank you, Hari, for calling me on this podcast. We are going to turn 10 years in another couple of months, March.
Okay, fantastic. Do you recall which was your very first investment?
Very first investment as Pi Ventures, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think probably 2-3 companies happened almost at the same time. Zenatix, Niramai, and I believe Sigtuple that we did in December of 2017, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong also. But I believe these were the 3 first.
Okay. You are very well known in the ecosystem, so I won't get a lot of into the background and all of that. I thought I'll start by asking you a little bit about the year that's gone by. Anything in terms of specific developments that stood out to you in terms of positive developments for deep tech startups in India?
See, sometimes when an ecosystem is changing, or rather, I would say evolving, it is hard to just put a sort of a time window on it and then say, okay, something really moved here, right? I do believe that the momentum that we are seeing in deep tech today is a result of many decades of work in our ecosystem, not 2025. And the reason I say that is that if you think about us in like 40 years back, 30 years back, we were primarily a body shopping sort of a setup. And then we moved to a product sort of a setup. IP came right after. And with capital becoming a bit more available at early stage, freedom to do experimentation and dream big started to sort of take its root. Along with the world market opening up with COVID, in my mind, COVID was a very big inflection point. It changed how people do business, and that is very important because it's hard for me as a founder sitting in India to sell something sitting somewhere else. Don't have the resources, means, times to do it. But in a post COVID, it was acceptable to do this over Zoom, and it brings such a massive efficiency in the selling interaction process. Things started to move, right? So I don't know about 2025, but we have been building towards it. These momentums have been there, the undercurrents. And I have no doubt in my mind that when we talk about India, India's image has changed. We are no longer a software or a body shopping setup, right? We will be called rather a deep tech nation. India will be known for its deep tech in possibly less than 5 years, right? We will get counted. Today, when you talk about Israel, deep tech comes to you, right? India will be a similar sort of a thing, if not better, in terms of what credentials we will have in the deep tech. So that momentum is building up, and it has been building up for decades, not 2025.
Any one or two examples that come to your mind, whether in your own portfolio companies or what you have seen, that gives you the sense that India is being seen now as a deep tech nation?
India is not yet seen as a deep tech nation, just to correct you. I think we are still few years away, but we are beginning to see offshoots of it. Lot of examples in the ecosystem and in our portfolio. I think the biggest one is probably Agnikul. They are the only company in the world to have created a 3D printed rocket engine which can be printed so efficiently, and then it can power and make a small rocket to move to launch satellites in space, right? And now there are so many, space sector is seeing such a big inflection point because suddenly you realized, oh man, we have so many space scientists in our country, and what takes $100 million to build outside, we can build in $10 million, right? And then why not use this talent and the economic efficiency to launch things which are world class? So Agnikul is right at the center of it. They are known globally. They've also done their first test launch successfully in 2024, now gearing up for their commercial launch. And most of their customers are actually, of course, they have some Indian customers, but most of their customers are abroad. And that is a very important point to note because, for such a costly asset like a satellite, somebody outside who probably has other options is looking to sign up with Agnikul to do their launch. That really marks, a major milestone in terms of how an Indian company from Indian roots can play on the global world stage.
Since you mentioned Agnikul, I want to also ask, you're already into your second fund, and over the 10 years, can you give us a sense of how your investments have changed in terms of the type of companies that you invested in? And surely Agnikul is a standout example of a kind of an exception in terms of the hardware side of things, whereas probably you invested more in software or AI kind of deep tech companies more in your first cohorts and so on. Give us a sense of how this is changing now.
It's evolving. I think 10 years back, we were primarily investing in AI. See, our fundamentals of thinking has not changed. We want to invest in technologies which are likely to infect, may not be inflecting today because we come in early. If we are investing in technologies which are already inflecting today, then we'll probably late, So in 2016-17, heavy focus was on AI, and we did a bunch of those companies which did very well in their own right. And then in 2018-19, I felt just like AI held the promise to change the world in software. I felt material science can change the world in the physical side of world, right? And then we started digging into it, and then we started researching it, and then Agnikul happened for us. During our association with Agnikul, we realized that this is not just theory. We don't realize that how much of material innovation Agnikul has done to launch a rocket, although it doesn't sound apparent from outside, because it forms the bedrock of material science innovations. Typically, forms the bedrock of physical innovations. That thesis took root, and then we launched our second fund, which was out deep tech fund. Right, we said we will do deep tech across the board. Our fundamentals of investing has not changed. It is actually based on just three pillars. Are you solving a problem which is large and global? Are you solving in a way which is 10x better through an innovation in technology with the respect to the state of the art? That's where the deep tech angle typically comes in. And are you a founding team which can pull this off? Right. So the technologies and the kind of sectors, if you will, keep changing with time, but the fundamentals of what we look for in investing remains same.
Okay. I'm going to jump into your recent investments. Three of them I can recall: MoonRider, most recently Owly Space, and I think Photonics, Lightspeed Photonics, probably before MoonRider. And if I've missed any of those in recent months, please add them. And can you walk us through how and why you selected these particular companies, what stood out for you? And we can also talk about what they reflect in terms of how the ecosystem is changing as you go along.
One thing to realize is all of them are very different companies from each other, right? But I'll try to answer your question. MoonRider, fantastic company. What attracted us towards them is that electric tractors can become a reality for farmers around the world. And the fundamental problem for electric tractors has been their cost, which is typically 40%, 50% higher than the normal ICE tractors. And MoonRider took a different approach. Instead of trying to take your ICE vehicle, and retrofit it in some way or upgrade that vehicle to become a electric tractor, which most of the companies around the world have done, these guys said we will innovate ground up, right? So they made the entire vehicle ground up, which was actually optimized and designed to be an electric tractor, which unlocked a lot of efficiencies at different levels. And ultimately, their price point is very similar to an ICE tractor, right? And that enables a whole lot of things down the road. So that is what attracted us. Of course, in all these investments, our excitement for the founder remains, one constant, right? That is a sort of a lowest common denominator across all these, right? Lightspeed Photonics, very interesting company out of Hyderabad. So what is happening is you can see the data rates are increasing in communication. AI is putting a lot of pressure on data centers, etc. And a lot of this data moves on fiber, and or if it is moving on copper, it needs to go and move on fiber. So wherever it is already moving on fiber, somewhere you need to convert the digital data into light, and those converters are today bulky and generate a lot of heat and take a lot of power. So these guys actually shrunk that. It is almost your human nail size part, which can do that conversion very efficiently in terms of cost, in terms of power, in terms of footprint you need on the board. And that also enables a lot of applications which today are on copper but are wanting to go to fiber, since there is lesser space. For example, if you think about a camera sensor in which you can't put a big connector to do that, but if you have a small connector, then you can do that and transfer the data from the sensor on the way to digital processing. So that's Lightspeed. We felt its product can possibly change how the data to light conversions are happening across the systems. Third is Ollie Space that we announced. This is a space sector startup, as you can see from the name. It actually solves a very old problem, but in a very new way. So what is the old problem? The old problem is that get this satellite. We see TV at home. We are talking on phones, etc. These are enabled by geo satellites, which are typically 36,000 kilometers up in the space. These satellites are typically commissioned for 15 to 20 years, right? When they are built, and they cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Their infrastructure is still valid even after 15, 20 years. So your TV signal that they are supporting is still the same hardware is used, but they simply run out of fuel. So imagine you've spent 300 to 500 million dollars, and after 15 years, the rest of the satellite is still functional, but it has no more fuel to run around, right? What do you do? So you have to junk that satellite, and then the asset goes dead. What Ollie Space wants to do is to create a much smaller satellite, which can go literally latch on to that satellite as a jetpack, and then without transferring fuel, become their tow truck in some sense and keep the satellite in orbit for another 5, 6 years, right? So from a very low cost option, you get another 5 years of an asset which is typically generating 50 to $100 million per year for you, is a great outcome for these businesses. And we felt the team, although a very young team, we felt that they had some unique ideas on how to do this in a low cost, low footprint manner rather than building a very big satellite again to push that. So this is a bit of a context on our some of our recent investments. You will see some more announcements coming out from us. Some deals are in paperwork in the next few weeks, and they are equally exciting, typically solving a large problem, but in a sort of a unique and a forward looking way.
So, the type of innovations that these founders are now coming up with, like you said, these are very different companies, but is there a sort of underlying theme here in the sense that do they reflect in any way how India's deep tech ecosystem is changing or even maturing a little bit?
I don't know which is a cause, which is an effect, to be honest, right? You could say the ecosystem is maturing and therefore you are seeing the startups, or you could say you're seeing the startups and therefore the ecosystem is maturing. Probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It has to be a good resonant partnership. One cannot lead to the other completely, and the vice versa. Few things which are changing, and this is probably going back to your very first question of what is the decadal change we are seeing. One thing for certain has changed. Founders in India are dreaming big. Founders in India are not thinking India. Founders in India are thinking global from day one, right? Founders in India are thinking that they can solve any problem as good as anybody else in the world, probably better, at probably one fifth or one tenth the cost, right? So those things are probably getting established culturally and intrinsically, where people are not afraid to take those risks. And the early stage funding, which is very necessary for experimentation, we know that 90% of the startups won't make it, but they still need those first couple of $1 million, maybe half a million dollar, I don't know, a small check, which can help them do their initial experimentation on their ideas to either refine it or kill it, whichever way it goes. But with that capital, if I enable 10,000 experiments, just by law of probabilities, 100 are likely to come out of it successful, right? So you have to broaden the base of experimentation. You have to dream big, and I'm pretty sure you'll see big companies coming out from India very soon.
Yeah, I was going to ask this question a little down the line, but since you brought up the point that founders are now dreaming big in India, to your mind, what are the factors that are coming together that's enabling this in the sense that, why now? Why do you think founders are now coming up with bigger ideas, going global?
I don't know, Hari, right? That's what I said, that I don't know which is the cause, which is the effect, right? It's like seeing a child grow. Suppose you live with the child, you don't notice how they're growing. But if you meet a growing child in 2 years, you suddenly see, oh my goodness, you've grown so tall or whatever, right? I think the ecosystem in India has been growing, right? It is just that we are taking notice of it now, because we have been sort of blindsided with all the SaaS startups and AI noise and all that other consumer noise, which are also important in their own way. But deep tech, was an ignored sort of a piece. Only crazy people were doing it. Now that craziness is acceptance, and with the RDI initiative, I think everybody is becoming crazy.
Okay, fair enough. I want to ask you about another aspect of how things are changing. And obviously, your own investments reflect the growing potential of hardware focused startups in India. Is this something that you expect will grow and accelerate in the coming quarters and years?
Actually, if you think about it, Hari, hardware is a subset of, okay, deep tech typically is physical startups. Deep tech in software is, probably 5-10% of the entire deep tech universe. Deep tech typically means physical. Hardware sometimes means boards and electronics, right? But somebody's making a jet engine, that is also hardware, right? Mechanical innovations, material innovations, etc. So in this whole physical world, right, lot of innovations will come. And one of the other inflection points we must not ignore is Operation Sindoor, which happened, I think it happened last year, right? And that led to a different urgency within the Indian defense to actually go and seek out solutions which can be built in India and disruptive. In any nation, defense and deep tech progress go hand in hand because typically defense is your first buyer for a deep tech innovation. So, yes, the answer to your question is deep tech primarily is 90-95% physical innovations rather than software. And therefore, yes, we will see a lot more of it coming.
Okay, fair enough. The demand is definitely there. RDI is another reflection of serious government intent with a lot of money as well to back it now. But you also need other factors like a solid pool of scientific knowledge and things like that. Can you dive into this a bit more? Talk about how those factors are also coming together now?
So, I don't know about the now part of your question, right? I think we are noticing it now. It has been there. We have a whole bunch of universities with a lot of infrastructure, people and machines, equipment. I think people have more awareness to use it. There is a change needed though. There is a change needed in Indian research. It needs to get more commercial oriented rather than pushing papers. And I believe that with the startup momentum, we are seeing how we actually meet quite a few professors from universities in India who want to do startups, right? So that momentum is probably changing a little bit. And I do believe world is flat, right? So if let us say I'm looking for a certain expertise which is not available in my immediate network, I have a ability to reach out to somewhere, someone will know about it. So scientific talent in India has always been there, but that's not what the defining part of this whole thing is.
Any standout names that come to your mind where you feel that they are close to, breaking into global markets?
Oh, that we have plenty, right? We have recently had IPO of Idea Forge, I believe, and I think Tonbo Imaging is either listed or just on their way to list, right? These are some deep tech companies which built several years ago before even we recognize what term deep tech means in India, right? So we have some of those. The new companies which we are meeting these days, a lot of companies sort of never heard of, right? They have been building for decades and doing some, pretty sizable business with Indian defense that we are noticing now. The companies which are, let's say, in our portfolio also, they are beginning to get into revenues. So I think there are quite a few. Again, Hari, you will. It's an evolution. So you will see more and more of them every year as time passes.
Okay. On the flip side, what would you say are some still difficult challenges in the way of serious scale for these companies?
I think this is a tragedy for Indians by and large, irrespective of which sector we are in. Sometimes we think we are successful because of government. Sometimes we think we are successful in spite of them, right? And that's the scenario with deep tech as well. I think government has been at the intention level very supportive. They have announced a $10 billion of funding for deep tech. I hope it gets used in the right way in deep tech. but there will be losses along the way. We are still a very license driven nation. Couple of our companies have struggled to get simple clearances of starting a drug license. Some companies have taken 6 to 9 months. It's all bureaucracy, right? The people sitting there, as Indians we take time for granted, so it's okay to sit on it for 6 months, right? So I think in spite of good intentions from the government, I think there's a lot more work needed to enable right decision making processes. So I think, to summarize, I think government has been very good at intention level, but at the ground level, it is very, very hard to work with them.
Okay. I'm going to switch to asking you about this year a little bit since we're kind of talking at the top of the year as well as in the coming years. Any sectors where you think that we will see, startups break out, become more established, make strong headway in terms of their commercialization journey? And I'm aware of how you've kind of reiterated that we are only noticing it now and this has been happening. But to your mind, any sectors where you think 2026 will be really interesting for Indian deep tech?
Defense, people doing business with defense, I think are in good place. I do believe that space sector should see further uplift. Semiconductor, software, software is always there, right? As a probably no particular inflection point for them. They have been doing their business; they'll continue to do it. Clean energy is another sector which we should see a massive development. Robotics, non-defense robotics in maintenance and other things, right? Those are the other things that can actually see inflection. But I think it will be across the board, to be honest. But people doing with defense, provided our policies don't change again suddenly and bureaucracy doesn't kill us, we should be able to see a lot more momentum. We are, by the way, honestly, we are capable of growing at 5 to 10x right now than what we are growing if we can take care of our bureaucracy. It just takes forever to get things done when there are some touch points with some permissions required from the government to do various things.
Hmm. My next question, you kind of partially answered them briefly, but I want you to do a little bit of a deep dive into. I've made a list of sectors for myself, and I want to know your views in terms of what you think is possible in these sectors in Indian deep tech over the next, say, 3 years. In the optimistic scenario, for example, in space tech, like you said, Agnikul stands out for the 3D engine that they have built, or a Pixel stands out. So, examples of companies, examples of technical and business breakthroughs.
Understood. Okay. See, in space tech, I think we will definitely see commercial launches from India for global market. Right, we should definitely see that in the next 2 3 years. We should also see in satellites there is also this play of building a satellite bus apart from the payload. I think we should see a bunch of companies scaling up in that segment because we can build them much cheaper, much more efficiently than some of the Western counterparts. In semiconductors, I think we should definitely see lots of chips coming out or ASICs coming out, which are more integration play or disruptive play in terms of those alternatives being available only as discretes or from some other companies like in China, etc. So we should see all that getting commercialized. Clean energy, I think a lot of stuff is already happening. You can see Ultraviolet has done their own mobiles, MoonRider is doing their own tractors. You will see a lot more of those. You will see electric trucks, you will see electric trains coming out from Indian companies. Retrofit doesn't work here. I think there needs to be a ground up innovation. You will see autonomous things coming up in various sectors. You will see probably a magnetic lift transport system within controlled premises. You will see a whole lot of precious metal mining from battery recycling and other recycling. I mean, list goes on. Quantum. You will see quantum computers coming out of India, quantum crypto coming out of India. What else? You may see nuclear energy coming out of India, right? I think we are working in all dimensions, and you should see a lot more things coming out in all these dimensions.
Okay, on my own list, I also had, you mentioned robotics earlier. So I'm saying robotics and physical AI, biotech and life sciences.
Yes, absolutely. I miss those, but as I said, you can name any sector and you will see things. I think we should see drugs coming out of their India, which are first in class of international relevance. In robotics, you should see, like we have a company called Armatrix, which is doing very well. They have a 3-meter long arm which moves like a snake and get into places which is hard to get into for inspections, etc. Totally autonomous, right? We have autonomy which does autonomous delivery of things, right? So robotics, definitely physical AI, definitely we should see a lot more deployment in practical places, especially industrial use cases. 100%.
You did mention nuclear. You did mention nuclear energy. More specifically, have you, wearing your VC hat, have you looked at nuclear fusion in India? How viable are such efforts? I mean, there are already a few
Yes.
companies.
I think there are a few companies in India. We've met some of them, not all, of course. To answer to your question, my gut feeling is yes. I think there is a way to build a nuclear fusion company in India in its own template. What I mean is, I think we lose it when we try to see how it has been done somewhere else, and then we try to sort of replicate it here. That approach does not work for us. We are a very different country. We are a very different talent. So if someone can apply first principles on how to solve the fundamental problem, I am pretty sure we will see some successes in that direction.
So, historically, there's been this little bit of at least perception, but a strong perception that even in deep tech in India, initially and definitely in software, people have worked on the application side of things. But one does see that changing. Do you see more fundamental work coming up in India? For example, in physical AI, do you see someone building a serious physical AI stack? Or in clean energy, do you think the startup will finally succeed in making cell chemistry, India's own cell chemistry technologies work? I mean, I think Log9 came very, very close to it, but they had some business challenges. But things like that, do you see more fundamental work coming up?
Short answer is yes. Although I do believe that there are certain things that you want to innovate on, and there are certain things you don't need to innovate on. This whole indigenous place sometimes get overplayed. We don't need to, for example, I may get hit for this, but I do believe that we don't need to chase and create our own LLM, for example, right? Or the people are just burning dollars to do it. I think it is just useless, because LLMs by themselves we created, it will change the whole dimension of how small LLMs can do the job, and those things I see very little point of doing it, ground up in India, unless you have a. So the difference there is, you don't need to do it if the goal is to do it. Okay, let's make an India LLM, right? But let's say I have an insight of how I can make a more efficient LLM. Yes, 100% do it, but it should be applicable at global scale, not just at India scale. So I think we have to turn some of our perspectives around on why we are doing things in India. To me, just doing it because we are in India does not make sense. It has to make sense at the global scale. Then we should do it. So from that piece, to your point of whether we will see a Indian cell chemistry coming out, yes, 100%. If it makes sense that it can win at the global level, not just because we are just making it India and it is anywhere available in China, right? That play I don't understand so much.
So, in this example, you feel it's fine to continue to buy it from Panasonic or a Chinese company or wherever.
Absolutely, why not, right? Provided I see word as a more flat place, rather than divided, and therefore I would leverage what is available, and I'll build on top of that and build something great that the world wants, rather than trying to do things which are already done before.
But what would you say to to how some experts argue that with the kind of advantage China has, for example, the monopoly it has on processing rare earth minerals, in a way, that kind of weaponize it economically. So,
Sure.
how would you respond to that?
Yeah, there is a ground for it, and if they do, I think we will need to find an alternative. But that alternative does not need to come for India, for example, right? We could buy it from somebody else, right? There'll be other markets that will open up as well. I am saying something different. I am saying that just we should not replicate what has been done here, right? Definitely innovate here, and innovate so that you can do a much better product than what they're doing and sell it to the globe, not just for India. On That is a on part in my head. Now there will be certain things which will have, uh, in spite of the world being flat, it will have certain decisive advantages in how the world operates, and one of them is nuclear energy. So in nuclear energy, if you get your own fusion going in a way which may not be very unique in the world with other nuclear fusion, but it will be a great asset to have it in India. So there are very few small exceptions here and there where this philosophy works, but by and large we should be innovating for the world and not just for India, is my limited point.
I'd probably put quantum computing in that category as well. In fact, just this morning I saw a headline. I haven't read the story. I think a company called Rigetti, they've just announced that CDAC, I think, is or one of the Indian government organizations, is going to purchase a quantum computer from them. And I think these kind of really frontier tech, very expensive stuff, we should probably make in India, right?
100%. We have a company called Confluence which is trying to make a quantum computer using photonics approach, and it will be pretty unique. It is not that it has been solved somewhere else and they're sort of trying to do it again and again in India. Yeah.
Okay, just to bring it back to Pi Ventures and the years ahead, is it too early to talk in terms of Fund 3, or are there early conversations going on?
Too early, I think. We are still sort of head down and trying to. One thing which distinguishes us is that we are not arm chasers, right? We are not like on a treadmill raising a fund every 3 years. That's not why I started Pi. I think we have to do meaningful job to the money in hand, and I think we have quite a bit of work to do in our fund too. So we'll do it when it's right. I think for us, the fundamentals of investing remain the same, right? We are still looking for companies which can make an impact on the global scale. We're still looking for companies which can do 10x differentiated outcomes based on technology innovations. We're just looking for awesome founders, right? Those fundamentals change. The technologies that we focus on is a function of time, right? For example, AI is no longer a deep tech, and some people may argue with me on that, but I fundamentally believe that AI has become literally an incremental technology, and very few use cases or problem statements in AI remain a disruptive tech today. And but it was disruptive when we started our fund one, right? And then in fund one we made a choice not to look at quantum, but now we are looking at quantum, right? So technologies inflect at different points of time. So the whenever we do the fund three, one thing I can tell you is that the technologies you may see different, but our fundamental philosophies of how we look at disruptive technologies won't change.
Okay, since you recognize the need for maybe a little bit of a gap in the growth stage side of things,
Yeah.
just trying to get your thoughts on how that might be solved in the coming years.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a different question, right? That's a different question. I think the question is whether we need a growth stage deep tech fund in India, right? That's the question probably you're trying to ask. I have two views on it. One is deep tech ventures don't build for the pursuit of science. Ultimately, they are building for something. They have to be a business in the end, right? Technology is a means. So, one of the beliefs I have is that can we transform deep tech companies by the time they are raising Series B into businesses, and the deep tech goes under the hood, right? So, in the sense that when a Series A B investor look at it, they are looking at it as a business rather than looking at it as a deep tech company. So that's one thought, and we've seen examples of that. So then the entire middle stack capital that is available in all the funds becomes available to those ventures. There'll be a pocket of companies which will still not get there because the gestation period is even longer. So there you need some next stage capital to do deep tech further, and maybe those things will become businesses in series D and E. So there is, I believe, there is a scope to do a scale deep tech fund which can look at series B onwards, for sure, but it has to come with specialization. I think one of the other things that we will see in the ecosystem, and for the good or the bad, because of the RDI initiative, which is a great initiative by the way, but a lot of funds are turning their board literally, right? They have not done deep tech before, and suddenly they are becoming deep tech funds. I think investing is does not require deep tech experience. I think that I can, for investing, you don't really need to understand that much, but if you want to do a real good job in depth, and understand those companies and all that, then it does require some expertise. And how you apply frameworks in deep tech investing is a bit different than how you apply in SaaS investing or consumer investing. So I think one of the challenges we may face with the recent initiative is that you may get a lot of funds doing deep tech without understanding or having experience in it. It's both positive and negative, because one way is that founders will have availability to more capital which is needed, but at the same time I think somebody's putting those capital and they will have probably some disappointments down the line. Coming back to the point of a scale deep tech fund, I think there is a pocket for it, but I'm a believer of specialization. So let's say I play in a cricket team and I'm an opener, and you suddenly put me in the middle order, then I don't know whether my skills will match. And sometimes those transitions do match, right? We have seen players that do it. So I think there is an opportunity for sure, but I have a bit of a caution for my fellow investors that don't rush into it because there is an opportunity. Also recognize where you are really good at and what game do you play, and then play A plus game there rather than doing a B job in some other's place.
That's it for today. You can find the links to Manish's bio and Pi Ventures website in the show notes, wherever you get your podcasts. To support my work, please subscribe to my posts at indiatechreport.in. I'm Hari Arakli. Thank you for listening.